Welcome to our channel, where the shadows whisper and your darkest fears come to life. Tonight, we delve into the unsettling realm of neighborly horror, with 3 true stories that will make you question who you can trust. These spine-chilling tales will send shivers down your spine and leave you wondering about the secrets lurking behind closed doors, just a wall away from your own. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying tales, because once you step into the shadows with us, you may never want to leave. It started subtly, an uneasy feeling that I was being watched. A prickle on the back of my neck, the sensation of eyes boring into me as I moved about my home. I dismissed it at first, attributing it to stress or an overactive imagination. After all, this was a quiet neighborhood, a place where children played freely on sidewalks and neighbors exchanged friendly waves. The thought of danger lurking so close seemed absurd. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. It began to manifest in fleeting glimpses, shadows darting out of sight when I turned my head too quickly, a curtain falling back into place just as I glanced at the house across the street. Was it my mind playing tricks on me, or was someone truly watching my every move? The unease morphed into full-blown fear one particularly dark night. I was home alone, engrossed in a book, when I noticed a strange light flickering outside my living room window. It was a faint orange glow like the ember of a cigarette, and it seemed to be moving slowly across the yard. My heart pounded in my chest as I cautiously approached the window, peering out into the darkness. There, partially obscured by the overgrown bushes at the edge of my property, stood a figure. The flickering light was coming from a lighter held in their hand, illuminating their face in brief, unsettling flashes. Though I couldn't make out their features clearly, I could tell it was a man. He was tall and thin, with a shock of dark hair that fell across his forehead. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, just watching me. Then, as quickly as he had appeared, he was gone, melting away into the night. I was paralyzed with fear, my body trembling uncontrollably. Who was this mysterious figure, and what did they want? Days turned into sleepless nights as I became consumed by the need to uncover the identity of my stalker. I installed security cameras, hoping to catch him in the act, but he was always one step ahead, his presence felt but never captured. The fear began to seep into every aspect of my life. I was afraid to leave my house, afraid to be alone, even afraid to close my eyes at night. The once comforting silence of my home had transformed into a suffocating prison, the walls seeming to close in around me. Then one night it all came to a head. I was awakened by a noise outside my bedroom window. It was a soft, scratching sound like fingernails dragging down the glass. I lay there, frozen in terror, as the scratching continued, slow and deliberate. The old house had stood vacant for years, a looming Victorian with peeling paint and overgrown ivy, casting an eerie shadow over the otherwise charming neighborhood. When a young couple, eager to make it their dream home, purchased it for a steal, whispers of excitement rippled through the community. But beneath the surface of renovation and renewal, a sinister secret festered in the home's depths. From the very first night, Sarah and Mark, the new homeowners, noticed peculiarities. Unexplained noises, floorboards creaking at odd hours, the faint sound of whispering coming from the basement, plagued their attempts at a peaceful night's sleep. Initially, they dismissed it as the house settling, the groans of an aging structure adjusting to new occupants. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences intensified, growing more frequent and unsettling. One evening, while unpacking boxes, Sarah noticed a musty, damp odor wafting from the basement door. It was an unpleasant smell like mildew and decay, and far stronger than what one would expect from a recently aired-out space. Curiosity piqued, she mentioned it to Mark, who, armed with a flashlight, decided to investigate. As Mark descended the creaky wooden stairs, flashlight beam dancing across the dusty darkness, he noticed something strange. The basement, which they had left empty and unlocked, now had a padlock securing the old, heavy wooden door that led to the crawl space beneath the house. A shiver ran down his spine. They hadn't locked it. In fact, they hadn't even touched the padlock, its rusted metal a testament to its age. Unease settling in his gut, Mark called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Hello? Is anyone down there?" Only silence answered him. He rattled the padlock, the metal cold and unforgiving under his grip. Nothing. Deciding it was probably nothing, but still disturbed by the locked crawl space door, Mark returned upstairs. He told Sarah about the padlock, the unease evident in his voice, but she, ever the pragmatist, rationalized it away, suggesting that the previous owners must have secured it before leaving and they had simply forgotten. However, deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, watered by the increasingly strange events that followed. Objects began to disappear and reappear in different locations. Tools left in the basement vanished, only to be found neatly placed back in their toolbox days later. One morning, Sarah found a single withered sunflower on the kitchen table, its head bowed as if in mourning. Neither she nor Mark had brought it inside. Fear, insidious and cold, began to weave its way into their lives. The whispers they had initially dismissed as their imaginations now seemed to follow them, growing louder in the quiet moments, hinting at unseen presences lurking just beyond their perception. They tried to convince themselves it was all in their heads, the stress of the move and the renovations playing tricks on their minds. But the truth, far more sinister and terrifying, awaited them in the bowels of their basement. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Mark decided to install a hidden camera in the basement, hoping to catch whatever or whoever was responsible for the unsettling events. They left for the day, their usually cheerful home now a source of dread, the silence thick with unspoken fear. When they returned, a palpable sense of wrongness permeated the air. The musty odor from the basement was significantly stronger, causing Sarah to gag. Rushing downstairs, Mark's blood ran cold at the sight before him. The padlock on the crawlspace door was broken. Lying on the floor, its rusted shackles snapped clean through. The heavy wooden door hung ajar, a gaping maw leading into the darkness. Heart pounding in his chest, Mark reached for the light switch, but nothing happened. The elderly woman who lived in the house next door had always been an enigma, a recluse shrouded in an air of mystery that both intrigued and unsettled the residents of Applewood Lane. Mrs. Hathaway, as she was known, kept to herself, rarely venturing outside except for her weekly trips to the grocery store, her frail figure always swathed in a heavy, shapeless coat, a wide-brimmed hat casting her face in perpetual shadow. Children whispered tales of a witch living in their midst, fueled by her eccentric appearance and the strange, pungent odors that occasionally wafted from her home. Adults, while dismissing the children's fantasies, couldn't help but feel a sense of unease around the old woman, as if she harbored secrets best left undisturbed. Emily, a young woman who had recently moved to Applewood Lane, initially dismissed the neighborhood rumors as nothing more than idle gossip. She had always been a firm believer in logic and reason, scoffing at anything that hinted at the supernatural. However, her skepticism wavered as she witnessed firsthand the strange occurrences surrounding her elderly neighbor. It began with the garden. Mrs. Hathaway, despite her age and frailty, maintained a meticulously kept garden, a riot of colorful blooms that seemed to defy the seasons. Flowers that should have wilted in the summer heat thrived, their petals unnaturally vibrant, as if infused with an otherworldly glow. But it was the scent that truly unnerved Emily. Instead of the sweet fragrance of roses and honeysuckle, a cloying metallic odor hung heavy in the air around the garden, a smell that Emily couldn't quite place but instinctively knew was wrong. It was the smell of blood. Curiosity, a dangerous mistress, whispered in Emily's ear, urging her to uncover the truth hidden behind Mrs. Hathaway's carefully cultivated facade. She began paying closer attention, observing her neighbor's routine, noting the unusual deliveries arriving at odd hours, boxes and crates unloaded from unmarked vans by burly men who never spoke a word. One particularly humid evening, as Emily sat on her porch sipping iced tea and trying to ignore the oppressive heat, she noticed Mrs. Hathaway carrying a large burlap sack towards her backyard. The sack, heavy and misshapen, dragged across the ground, leaving a trail of dark, viscous liquid in its wake. Emily watched, her pulse quickening as Mrs. Hathaway disappeared into the garden shed, the door closing with a soft thud. The metallic scent intensified, now undeniable, making Emily's stomach churn. Driven by a morbid fascination she couldn't explain, Emily decided to investigate. She waited until nightfall, the moon hidden behind a thick veil of clouds, shrouding the neighborhood in an eerie darkness. Her heart pounded in her chest as she crept towards the fence separating her property from Mrs. Hathaway's, the scent of blood growing stronger with each step. Peering through a gap in the wooden slats, Emily gasped at the sight before her. Mrs. Hathaway stood in the center of her garden, surrounded by flickering candlelight, her frail figure transformed into something powerful and commanding. In her hands, she held a gleaming silver knife, the blade reflecting the candlelight in a macabre dance of light and shadow. And at her feet, sprawled on the ground, lay a figure. It was difficult to discern in the dim light, but Emily could make out the outline of a human form, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles, its clothing stained a sickening crimson. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more horror content. Remember, these are just a few of the countless tales of horror that lurk in the shadows, waiting to be told. The world is a strange and frightening place, filled with secrets best left buried. But for those brave enough to seek them out, the truth, however terrifying, awaits. And remember, sometimes the scariest things are closer than you think. Sweet dreams.